Hey everyone, I'm Nat and welcome to Ink and Hatch. Today we're going to explore the mindful doodling world of Zentangle. So if you've heard about it and want a more in-depth introduction, or if you want to jump in and learn an easy and accessible drawing technique, you are in the right place. So let's start off with what is Zentangle? So Zentangle is this really beautiful drawing technique or doodling technique developed by a lovely couple named Rick and Maria. And it's a great way to get into this flow state. The outside world just falls away and it's just you and the drawing. And I think we could all do with a little bit less of the outside world right now and a little bit more of introspection and creativity. It's this way to do something that doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of materials. All you need is a pen, pencil, and piece of paper. And it's an easy thing to pick up, just pattern drawings. If you can write your name, you can Zentangle. And it's all about no mistakes, just you and the paper. So I'm going to be jumping right in to a lesson because it's easier to show rather than tell. All right, so we're going to get started here, and we're going to talk about materials. All you need is a pen, pencil, and something to smudge with. So I like to use a tortillon. You can use your finger, you can use a Q-tip, that's fine. And I'm going to use this 3.5-inch Zentangle official Zentangle square to do this, but if you don't have one lying around, which I'd be very surprised if you did, I sometimes like to just rip out a piece of paper from a sketchbook, and you can fold it hot dog ways, ow, ow, like so, and then you can fold it hamburger like this and just crisp those edges, and you have not quite a Zentangle square, but you have something more manageable than a huge piece of paper. When it comes to art, the scariest thing is looking at this big old blank piece of paper. So I find working in smaller spaces is sometimes a little bit more easier on the brain. It's a lot less overwhelming. It's the possibilities, the endless possibilities of a blank space to create whatever you want is both wonderfully powerful and is so overwhelming. So I have my little step-by-step cute little Zentangle kind of basic steps. So there's 8 steps to the Zentangle method. And the first one is we start out with gratitude and appreciation. I like to take a moment. I don't think that we take enough time in our day-to-day lives to really give thanks for the time that we have, for the materials that we have, for the abilities that we have to do the things that we do. I'm on YouTube, internal screaming, showing you how to doodle, and I'm doing one of my favorite all-time activities, which is teaching and drawing. So I'm extremely grateful for this moment that I have to do this. So take that moment to just think what you're grateful for, appreciative for. There's actually scientific studies that say giving thanks a lot more like rewires your brain in this really magical and awesome way. So do that and rewire your brain in a positive way through the power of Zentangle. And the next step is our corner dots. And we're going to take our pencil. Right now, we're going to push aside all these other things. And we're going to do our corner dots, and I'm going to do this pretty heavily on my piece of paper, but you should do this extremely lightly. These first steps should be really light pencil strokes. So I'm going to place 4 corner dots, and I like to give myself a little bit of room. And this is supposed to be a way for us to just start. When it comes to drawing, we look at a blank piece of paper and we're like, oh, I don't want to ruin it with something ugly. I'm so afraid to just start. The corner dots are kind of like the gateway drug to just beginning. And so now we're going to do our border, and I'm going to make it slightly curvy. This is also supposed to be a light line, not too heavy. We're going to do our corner dots, and we're going to do our border. You can make it straight, you can make it wavy, and we're supposed to turn our paper constantly because we're supposed to go with the grain of our arm. You know, we're not supposed to write in an awkward way. We're not trying to, you know, be able to draw this way. We're supposed to go with the flow. This is all about being comfortable and just having a moment to draw. So now that we have our corner dots and our border, now we're going to do our string, which is like, I like to describe it as a mini border. And borders can be anything. It doesn't have to be this right now, but this is what I'm going to show you. We're going to go from the middle point right here to the middle point up here. And once again, you can draw straight, you can draw a curvy, you can do a wavy line. We're just getting from point A to point B. And now we're going to go from here to here. And then we're going to go from here to the middle point here. And we've made a nice little Z for Zentangle, or N for Nat, or Natasha, or hello to all my N first namers here, Nate, Nathaniel. So now that we have our wonderful border and string, now we're going to get into the tangles, which is our patterns. And I'm going to just scooch this away, and we're going to bring that back later, because right now we're going to do the funnest part, and we're going to bring out our pen. And I'm using a Sakura Micron PN pen. They have not paid me. I've literally been on YouTube for like a week, so I don't have any sponsors. I like the Micron PN pen. The nib is really hard, and it's pretty versatile, so you can make heavy lines, you can make light lines. It's really great for shading in. This nib is rather robust compared to the other 01 or 08 pens, and the numbers correspond with like the thickness of the nib. But I like these because they're great for beginners, especially if you're really trying to work on how heavy-handed or light-handed you can be. It's really great and robust. Anyway, and my personal love note to Sakura Micron pens. So for our first tangle, I'm going to write down the name of all these tangles have names. I'm going to write down the name, but you do not have to do that. And this tangle is called Crescent Moon. And we're going to start out, I'm going to start out in this space. So right along this border here, and you can choose any of these other spaces, I'm going to start making little half circles. I'm going to darken them in. If you're using a pen with kind of a smaller, that isn't really great for coloring in, I recommend hatching. It's part of the name, ink and hatch. You can hatch to kind of give it that sense of coloring in, and it also provides like a lot of really nice texture. But I have a nicer, more robust coloring in pen today, so I'm going to color that in. And we're going to keep making these little half circles. These little, I like to think of them as black ladybugs crawling around the border. I'm going to turn our tile as we do this. And it's really important to turn the tile, because once again you're going with the grain on this. You're going with what's most natural, the most natural movement for your arm. And if this is your first time drawing, you may be discovering what is natural for you when drawing and making a mark. So that's awesome. You have made a wonderful discovery today. How delightful. And you can make these, you can vary the size, you can vary the width of your little half circles. They don't have to be all the same. You can pause for a moment and say, well, I want to make the next one really, really big. I want it to make it a big boy, big ladybug. This one's been living life. He's a big boy. And maybe I'll add just a little tiny one over here, off to the side. It's all about, and this is going to be a regular theme, I like to tell my students, it's all about what's in your art heart. It's all about what feels right. And I'm going to make some suggestions throughout this class. I'm just going to color this in just a little bit more. I know that I can do it later, but I want to do it now. I can always edit it out. My fussing. So now what we're going to do is something called aura-ing, which is drawing an outline, rippling out from your little half circle. And we're going to keep going around and doing that with our little half circles. And you can draw these lines really wide, really close, depending on what kind of effect you want to get. And I suggest you play. A lot of really great discoveries happen when you just are, fooling around on the paper. You discover certain things about a style that you like, maybe. And this is actually kind of close. So I'm actually going to bounce this line. So I'm going to pick up my pen again and turn my tile. I'm just going to create a little echo. I'm going to pick up my pen, put it down, draw that line. That's a little close, so I'm going to just create this little ripple effect in this corner here. Create that arc right there. And it's all about making sure you pick up your pen, put down the line, pick up your pen, move the tile. Because what we're doing right now is we're creating a sense of deliberation. We're creating deliberate, thoughtful strokes. And we're getting into that zone where we're concentrating on what kind of marks we're making on the paper. I'm gonna skip that for now because I like that I kind of made that little arc connect. And now we're just gonna keep bouncing our lines. Round and around and around we go, turning our tile to what's natural, to what feels nice. And like I said before about those deliberate lines, we're trying to create that state where we're just thinking about the paper, what we're putting down on this piece of paper. What kind of lines and strokes we're making. That's all part of the process of getting ourselves into that mindful state and letting the rest of the world fall away. All we're worrying about right now is where we're going to put our next line and what kind of pattern we want to do next. That's all part of it. It's easier to worry about what kind of mark we're going to make rather than trying to solve every crisis in the world. Because sometimes, and I'm not saying that the outside world doesn't matter, I'm not trying to be a nihilist, but sometimes it's important for us to take those breaks from doom scrolling and the news and to take a moment, just let ourselves concentrate on something else. And it actually, I think, gives us a little bit of perspective. So I'm just going to color in my crescent moons. I can always come back and color them in. I probably will. And so the next tangle we're going to do, so we're all done. You done did it. We're going to return to Crescent Moon during our shading stage, which is so fun. I love shading. And we're going to go to a tangle called Hollybaw. What we're going to do now is we're going to draw a line, and then we're going to draw a parallel line right next to it. And then we're going to twist and turn our tile and draw another line. And what I want you to notice is how I stopped right when I got to a convergence point. I stopped right at the edge. And what I'm going to do is ghosting, not just for online dating and texting with possible potential romantic partners. No, ghosting originated in art. So you're going to ghost that line, which means pick up your pen, pretend like you're drawing the line, and then keep drawing it. So we're going to pretend, put down our pen and draw. Yeah? All right. Cool. And we're going to keep doing that. And you can make your lines as thick or as thin as you want. I love starting out with a really fat pathway. And then as I add more lines, making them thinner and thinner to kind of create that sense of perspective. But you may have a completely different idea in mind. You may see this tangle and say, well, I want to do something completely different. And I see this tangle completely differently. And that gets me to one of the foundational elements of the Zentangle method, which is the names. So Crescent Moon kinda makes sense for this. Hollybaw, what is a hollybaw? How does this relate to a hollybaw? And good questions. So the founders of this method, or the developers of this method, Rick and Maria, wanted to create names that didn't evoke any assumptions about what it should be. So you could call this tangle or pattern Criss-Crossing Pathways, or crisscross lines, or intersections, or Highway 90 something, overpass. Overpass isn't a bad name for a tangle. So they wanted to create names that were actually kind of rather silly, that had nothing to do with the tangles. They may have some personal value to them, to Rick and Maria, but in general, they wanted to make sure that people went in to Zentangle with no preconceived notions about what this pattern is supposed to be, because my hollybaw looks different from your hollybaw, looks different from so many different people's Holybot, and everybody has their own remixes that they do to it. Some students I've seen do Holybot as like a curved line or wavy like lines crisscrossing one another. So you don't have to do it my way. And that's the entire idea behind Zentangle, is being able to go in and, ooh, it's a lot of crisscrossing lines. Gonna have to do a big ghost right there. No preconceived notions about what anything should be, which is great. And I'm just randomly laying down these Holybot lines. And you can stop whenever you want. I like to fill up my area with tons of crisscrossing lines. And I'm looking at this and I'm feeling like it's good to go. It's done. I've crisscrossed enough lines. So now we get to the section where you have choices. I'm going to give you 3 choices with Holybot and where you want to take this. So, one option is coloring in these in-between, these negative spaces with black in all these little in-between spaces to add that sense of there's darkness that lies below. And it adds this really great contrast of black and white. And when we get our pencils going for the shading section, adds a really great sense of drama, which I really love. The other option is to leave it white. We'll get to that later. Just leave it alone. We'll get to it later. The third option is to create a kind of squished bubble. I like to call it a squished bubble. Squished ball. And to make that, you follow the straights. Then when you come to these corners, you're going to make a curve. Then you follow the straights, curve, follow the straights, curve, follow the straights, curve. Kind of creates this effect of a ball being squished. And I really like doing this because I think it adds something extra. And then in those little corner areas, you're just going to boop, color them in black to really showcase that the difference, the negative space, and these little squish bubbles. So the choice is yours. I'm going to leave my space white because I want to play around with that a little bit. So you are welcome to do that, to choose any one of those 3 wonderful options. All right. And so for the next pattern, let's do a tangle called Just Dandy. This is a fun one. At least I think so. I love this one. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a black dot. Not too big, not too small for your first one. And I like to make it kind of an edgy circle, kind of a diamond-ish, a rounded diamond. And then what we're going to do is outside of that bigger circle, create slightly smaller circles, dark dots, orbiting it. And then we're going to create slightly smaller dots orbiting that. So we're going to create this cascading effect of slightly smaller dots echoing out from this bigger dot. Until we're we're just pressing our pen down and then lightly pressing our pen down. So I'm just going to hard press. We've gotten to the point where they're that small. And the last one, I'm just going to do a light circle of dots. I'm going to have it stay within that frame. And there you go. Just dandy. I'm going to adjust my camera real quick. There we go. And I'm going to vary the size of my Just Dandies. So there will be small, I usually create 3 or 4 on my paper in my border. And I'm going to use that method of draw behind. And I'm going to pretend like this small one is behind that one when I get to my heavier dots. So just ghosting. Use that technique of drawing behind, and then my lighter lines, or my lighter dots. And there we go. And then I'll draw one, maybe one right over here, because I want to create that sense that they're floating. So that's the other thing about the patterns, is that everyone has their own interpretation of these patterns. So some people will see Just Dandy as molecules, some of my students have said, and they approach them a little differently. Some people see them as dandelions floating in the breeze. It's almost like these patterns are mini Rorschach tests. What do you see? How do you interpret these dots and these lines? Well, I see it this way, and you see it a different way, which is great. And that might help color how you shade, or how you decide to even draw or doodle your Just Dandies, which is pretty awesome. Every single class never ceases to surprise me in how people see things and draw things differently. Like, you know, how I just wrote out Just Dandy down here. We could write out the same word and it would look completely different, or would look different. So we can all do these same patterns together, but they're going to look different. They're just like my handwriting looks different from your handwriting. You know, it's our own signature. It's our own style. We all have it. And as we write, just as we write more, just as you'll tangle more, you'll start to see your style change. And that's rather beautiful. I love that. So I'm feeling fine with my Just Dandy. I like having this lightness, in contrast with, you know, Crescent Moon's kind of heavier nature, and Holly Baw's crisscrossing lots of lines. I like a little bit of circle to balance out the straights. So it's all about also, when you're looking at these tiles, thinking to yourself, what do you want to create? Do you want to create a tile that's really heavy? Or something that's really light and airy? Or do you want to create a balance of all these different elements? The more you tangle, the more you'll start to notice that different stuff. And this is kind of a foundational lesson in art. You're learning how to draw some of the fundamental lessons in drawing, which is composition, and how you balance out all these different elements into a piece. So for our next section, I am going to do something called printemps. So for the first year that I was doing this tangle, I called it printemps in my head, not knowing that it was French. And then I took a certified Zentangle class to become a teacher with Rick and Maria, and was a little sad in my heart that it was called Printemps. So, French, Printemps. So what is a Printemps? I will show you. It is a spiral-ish kind of thing. We're gonna spiral, spiral, spiral. Like that. And you can make your spiral lines thick and thin. I love Printemps as a way to teach my students how to use line weight to create something really interesting in their pieces. So if you can, with your pen, press really heavy, then go really light, and then press down really heavy. And we're going to use that element of drawing behind, ghosting our lines. Press really heavy, really light, really heavy, and really light. We're just going to vary that line weight until we feel our spiral is done. We're going to keep doing our little spirals. And I like to vary the sizes of my spiral because I think it creates an interesting visual contrast. You know, you can't tell how big something is without something small. You can't have something dark, or to recognize how dark something is without a little bit of light. You know, you need reference points in order to be able to see something a certain way. Another foundational element of what art is. I love teaching Zentangle because I feel like it's also a gateway to getting people interested and building people's confidence in their art skills. Like, art is a practiced thing. Especially like when you go on Instagram, you'll see all these wonderful, oh my goodness, beautiful art pieces. And you'll say to yourself, I could never make something like that. And you don't see how much ugly stuff came before it. If you were to look in my sketchbooks, I still to this day, sometimes when I'm drawing like a new pose or trying out something new, how many pages are just dedicated to wonky proportions and embarrassing stuff. Maybe that would be a whole YouTube video, just me showing my wonky art. To help build your confidence in making ugly art in order to get to that point where you make beautiful things. But what I love about Zentangle is it's just so easy to create beautiful stuff out of these patterns. And right now, what you'll see is I'm going over this borderline. Gasp! Oh my goodness. And I like to do this because, once again, these borders, they're just guidelines. You don't need to follow them. They're just there to give you a sense of where you should go. You know, it's the pathway through the woods, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go off the pathway a little bit if you see a berry patch and you want to check it out. I feel like that's where a lot of fairy tales go wrong. But in this case, no. You're not going to get eaten by wolves or anything. My high school art professor, my college art professor isn't going to stomp in and say, "What are you doing? Why did you do that?" This art, Zentangle, is all about no mistakes. You didn't make a mistake. You created an opportunity for yourself. And that is something that I think people, I personally get hung up with, I don't want to make a mistake on this piece of paper. I don't want to screw up. And it's once again rewiring your brain in order to think about this as not a mistake. This is an opportunity. You don't like the spiral that you just made? Okay. Tweak it a little bit. Maybe play around with the line weight. And okay, if you don't like it, then, maybe create a black dot. Draw over it with something else. And from that experience, you just created an opportunity for yourself to say, oh, I don't really quite like how I did that. So I'm you know what? I'm going to do it differently next time. That's awesome. You just learned something about yourself. You just figured out something that you like or don't like about your art style. See? It's all about reframing the moment of not, oh my gosh, I made such a mistake. No, you didn't. You learned something. Or you created an opportunity to create something different. Some of my best moments in art have been when I made a mistake, quote unquote mistake, and I found out, oh my gosh, that actually looks kind of cool. Just saying. Accidents happen and they make way for opportunities to look at things differently, to create something new. They are room to see. It's like how a kid will see a pot and a pan and say, hey, that's a musical instrument. It's not for making eggs. I'm gonna make some music. It's about taking that moment to see something different, create an opportunity out of it. So now that I have filled up, I don't know where you're at, but now that I've filled up this wonderful space with all these different spirals, I am going to create a sense of kind of, I like to call it drama. The Zentangle community likes to call it drama, contrast drama in my piece. And I'm going to do this thing where let me make sure you can see it. I'm going to kind of redraw over this line, and I'm going to create this kind of curve, redraw. And in this space, I'm just going to darken it like that. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So wherever I find there's this crevasse, I'm going to connect that space with kind of outlining this dark outline and redrawing over these lines to create a little bit thicker lines around my border. There you go. Those little corners. I like that quite a bit. That's rather nice. And it creates this sense of depth, like these, I see them as seashells. These really interesting seashells are lying on the floor of the ocean, and there's something that lies below in the depths. What could it be? Who knows? As you can see, I like to tell little stories in my drawings. All right. I'm happy with that. Cool. All right. So now we are going to put away our pens and take a sip of coffee and bring out our pencils and our tortillones or our Q-tip or our smudging finger. And we're going to start with shading Crescent Moon. So I will probably repeat myself more than I should, but it bears repeating. So there's more than one way to shade, and by no means does any shading follow the rules of art. We're not talking about, oh, the light is coming from this direction in this piece, and the shadows have to cascade this way. Nope. Ignore it. This is all about creating something that looks beautiful to you. Once again, following your art heart. What looks right, what feels right to you, taking that moment to pause and step back, say, all right, does that look good to me? Do I want to make it darker, lighter? So what I'm using is not a standard. I'm using a General pencil. General is a company that makes pencils. And this is I believe it's a carbon graphite pencil, which means the graphite is easier to push around. If you wanted to get a graphite pencil that was carbon or an ebony pencil, you can find them on Dick Blick Art Supplies. I know the name's kind of funny, Dick Blick. They have a wonderful range of art supplies. Once again, not sponsored by them, just a place I like to go to get my art supplies. And I like to, and they're also not Amazon, so yeah, pretty cool. You can also find them at Michael's store, generally any art supply store. You just want a soft graphite pencil, so 6Bs, anything with a B. And I like to load up a lot of dark, because I know how I want to shade this. I'm seeing this Crescent Moon as I'm looking down at the tops of something, and here's the abyss right here. I'm staring into it. Oh my goodness, what lies beneath? And I'm going to take the darkness and start to blend it out. I'm massaging the paper, massaging it. Oh, so nice. Just nice light, very light. You know, I'm not pressing down very hard. Just nice light circles, pulling and pushing that graphite out from the center to create this nice blend and shade, as if the sun is going down and it's lighting this area, but oh gosh, the sun can't reach the depths. They're so deep, these depths. My goodness. And I'm not going to shade all of it, because you want to make sure, like I said earlier, with, you know, creating big and small and medium, you want to make sure you have this balance of blacks, dark blacks, whites, and this range of gray, because they all inform each other. When we're looking at this piece, they all inform us of, oh, this is really bright. This is very dark. Oh, this is mysterious and gray. This is a darker gray. They all inform one another. It's like that, what is it, gold and blue, black and blue dress that appeared on the internet, where everybody was arguing about what color it was. It's because our brain is processing what we're seeing, and it uses contextual clues of light and color around us to figure out what how bright the whites are. Is it white? Is that gray? Is it black? as a way to inform us what all these colors mean. Our brain is processing it. And so we need the darks, and we need the whites, and we need the grays, so we can all tell what everything is. You know, you need a little bit of dark in order to see the bright spots. I feel like that's a Bob Rossism. That sounds like a Bob Rossism. Okay. I'm liking that. Might fill in some of the crevasses over here. But I'm enjoying that. I think I'm happy with that. It's always good to take a moment, pause, look at your piece, look at your section, and you can always come back and do more. When I started out with dark in the center, I'm sure my art professor would come in and be like, Natalie, what are you doing? You're putting up a bunch of dark right off the bat. You're supposed to go light and then add more dark in as you go. But I like the darkness. I like to start out with the dark. And then smudge in the light. Or smudge in the midtones. So now we come to Hollypaw. And I'm going to get to these sections momentarily. But I'm going to start from a place where we're all at right now, which is these Criss-Crossing Pathways. And right now we're going to create a wonderful sense of depth, which I love. So any space where there's a line coming underneath another line, what we're going to do is we're going to just boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Just create a little dark to create that sense of there's an overlap. I'm going to keep doing that with all these sections. I'm going to put just a little teeny tiny bit of graphite. Because if you're using a tortillon or a Q-tip, you may notice that there's like some graphite that's starting to be loaded up on it. So you get to a point where you have so much graphite loaded up on your tortillon or your pencil, or tortillon or your Q-tip, that sometimes you barely need any graphite in order to create a little smudge of gray, which I will show you when we get to Just Dandy, but that's future shading issues. Right now we're dealing with shading issues. And if you notice, I'm going to show you a little art drawing quick tip. I'm pointing my pencil in the edge where I want the most crisp line and the most detail. And I do that because shading like this, you know, it depends on where you've shaved off, and sometimes it's difficult to judge because you can't see it. So it's a little bit more difficult to get that crisp line. So it's always good to use the point of your pencil to make sure that you follow that line. Granted, and I should let you know this, it's good advice, but I don't always follow my own advice. So if you see me doing it, yeah. I'm sorry, and you shouldn't do as I do. And once again, always turning my tile, and I always miss like one crisscross, especially I've done so many crisscrosses in this one. I normally don't do this many. I'll probably come back and look at this and say, oh gosh, Natalie, what did you do? You missed like 5 crisscrossing pathways. What is up? What's going on with you? All right. Yeah, okay. So, now we have options. There are moments when I do like having a hard light, so that kind of dark gray that just stops. And this kind of really, but I'm going to soften that line or soften that shade just a little bit. I'm not going to pull the graphite as I usually do. I'm just going to massage it just a little bit just to give it that little soft look. But as I, hot tip, as I go down into the lines that I see as lower down, I might start pulling that graphite out a little bit more to create that sense that these lines are, you know, really far down. The light isn't quite getting to them. But once again, my holly baw is not your holly baw. And I want to make sure that you know that you can do your holly baw however you please and shade however you like. This is your time to just make something of your own creation, to be inspired, to get into that mindful flow state, and just create something beautiful. Create something that's yours, that's unique to you. Alright, I think I'm almost done with my pathways here. I'm just gonna smudge. Same thing with the tortillon. It's good to use the point to add to smudge up to the line where you don't want the smudge to get anywhere else. Okay, so now that we've done our pathways, we get to how do we shade these different things. Well, guess what? If you decided your background is black, you're done for now. Go get a cup of coffee. Go, pet your dog. Go check your, nope, don't check your phone. Get away from your phone. Just sit back and relax for a little bit, round out your shoulders, maybe do a little neck rounding. 'Cause right now, you don't have anything to do, which is awesome. So for those who did do the white lines, you can, where there's these crisscrossing pathways, you can just create a little light line, kind of massage that area out, and you can take kind of anything that's loaded up on your Q-tip or your tortillon, and you can shade in that little space right there. You could even do it where you only shade, pathways going in one direction. You might decide to do like one side darker than the other. Play around with it, see what you like. You can shade every piece, every white spot a little differently if you want. See what feels good. Play around. There's no mistakes here. You're learning. It's great. And there I go, not following my own advice. All right. Now for those who decided to do the rounded out bubbles, these little squish bubbles, what we're going to do is, here's kind of my quick and dirty trick to doing rounded bubbles. There's probably a lot of YouTubers. Goodness, I should probably make a video on, I could make an entire video on how to do gems, how to shade, gems, how to shade water, like little pocket bubbles of water. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to make a video like that, because I totally will. But this is my kind of quick and dirty trick to shading in circles, bubbles. I create a little dark U around here, and then I massage the graphite, and I make sure that I create a little bit of a white space. So I create a little bit of a white circle. I keep massaging my graphite, keep massaging it. And then I create a little itty bitty, teeny tiny kind of white space with the leftover graphite to kind of give it that little shine, especially around the edge right here. And then I'll just take a little bit more graphite. Oh, there I go, not following my own advice. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I'll just outline it just a little bit more. Create that dark contrast. There we go. And that's kind of the really quick and dirty method of shading in. Kind of rounded out water droplets, gems, things like that. I could go into a little bit more of the how to make it look really radiant and beautiful, but that's probably will take a little bit longer to do. But I'm happy to do it if there is a call for it. I love teaching art, so I might just do it anyway. Okay, so now that we have our Hollyba shaded, mine is partially shaded, I'll come back in and I'll shade more of it, but I want to make sure I'm not taking up too much of your time. And now we're going to get to Just Dandy. And Just Dandy, now I have all this graphite loaded up on my tortillon and or Q-tip. If you're using a finger, then I'll show you a way to do it just with your pencil. And I'm going to take this excess graphite that I have and just use some of it to create this very light outline on this outside rim. Just Dandy, I like to keep it pretty light because I see Just Dandy as a very light and airy pattern and tangle. So I'll just take my excess graphite and just round it out. And in this space where I have a little bit of overlap, I'll take my pencil and do this to kind of create that sense of overlap, really light. And if you have a pencil and you're using a finger, just create really light line with your pencil around the outside. Round the outside, round the outside. There you go. See? You done did it. Just Dandy is probably one of the easier tangles to do. And once again, you can play around with it. You can create a darker shade around this outside part. I had a student create a darker shade right underneath to make it look like it was a cell sitting in a pocket of a thing in the body on the molecular level. I don't know. It's been since freshman year college since I took biology. So I'm an art major and a writing major. What do you want from me? I could tell you about the anatomy of humans as it relates to drawing. Anyway, enough about that. Printemps. So with Printemps, I like to just, wherever I see an overlap, put down a little bit of graphite. Always making sure to point my edge on the line where I want to make sure it's most crisp. And with Printemps shading, I I really like to keep that hard light. I don't use my tortillon when I'm shading with Pétant. It reminds me of cell shading in anime or cartoons or comics, where there's this hard definition of light and shadow. So I rather like that when I'm shading my Pétant. I don't know why. It might be the swirliness. Reminds me of anime. Symbology in anime. But you are welcome to soften your lines if you wish when you're shading your Pétant. You know, I welcome you to go completely off script and do something different. Oh, there I go. Not following my own advice. There's 1,000,001 different ways to do these patterns and to combine them together. You don't have to do this Z shape that I did. You can literally like drop. Sometimes I'll drop a piece of thread or string onto the paper and I'll just tangle based off of that. Sometimes I'll go completely freehand and I'll start out with just some squiggly lines and then add different elements to it. It's can become kind of like jazz for drawing these really abstract and beautiful pieces that are so creative, and just you can create your own Zentangle inspired style, which is awesome. So here's the moment where you may be done shading and it's time to take a look at what you've made. Turn the tile around, take a look at it, you know, admire it. Take a step back. See, really look at it. Really look at what you've made, because oh my goodness, you made an entire drawing. This is awesome. So now I'm gonna bring back my little thing here. We're going to bring back the pen and you're gonna sign your piece. You know, create your own little signature. Sign your piece. I usually date them also on the back, or date them somewhere here, because this is your work. You created something, and now's the time to appreciate again. Appreciate that you've made something. You've made something beautiful. You've made something, and I highly encourage you take what you've made, maybe make a little folder of things. I find that tangles that I've done, you know, months ago, I'll come back and I'll look at them and I'll see new possibilities, or I'll notice something completely different and I'm like, wow, that looks a lot better than I thought it did. And this helps us really appreciate the art that we've done, really be able to see our art for what it is, as beautiful creations and as things that we should be proud of. You made something, for goodness sake. So appreciate it. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to be able to do art and be able to share it with people on YouTube. Anyway, I guess I should give the usual end greeting of like and subscribe. Be sure to share with your friends, and I hope that you Zentangle. I hope that you feel comfortable sharing your pieces with the world. So I hope to see you again with more drawing tips and mindful drawing tips. And if you have any suggestions, be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. If there's anything in particular you want me to teach, any questions you have, my goodness, I'm here for you guys. I want to teach you guys, and I want to encourage creativity in drawing. So please be sure to leave comments and questions down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.